Hello, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for Upgrade Your Store, how grocery leaders are streamlining replenishment and operations. I'm Maggie Jacqua. I'm the content director of Whole Foods Magazine, and I'm thrilled to be with you here today to talk about how you can reduce your stress and boost your success, something we all want to do, right? So independent and natural grocers have an opportunity to better serve their customers and reduce the headaches of day-to-day operations through the use of advanced technologies. So a quick question for everyone joining us. In the control panel of your Zoom window, you can log your reactions. There's a little button there. If you see that, raise your hand if you would like to reduce your inventory reordering time by 80%. Who wants to save that nice chunk of time? I know I could really use 80% time savings and put that to better use. So if that sounds good to you, that's what we're here to talk about today. So the market at Edgewood and Vori are joining us today, and they're going to discuss ordering solutions that can help retailers save that time. This is a strategy that's being adopted by natural and independent grocers and suppliers across the country. So a few of the things that we're going to learn over the next hour, the market at Edgewood is going to be a case study to help us see how you can do this. We're going to talk about how grocers are eliminating the use of phone calls, fax machines, that old fax machine, and clipboards from their reordering process. And we're going to talk about the capabilities of the multi-vendor ordering solution provider, Vori. And we're also going to talk about some best practices for implementing advanced technology in your store. So these are all things that are going to help you save headaches and just grow and be more successful. Before we dive in today, a few quick housekeeping details. You will be able to ask any questions that you have at the end of the presentations. Again, there in the panel at the Zoom bottom of the page, there is the questions panel, and that's where you can put your questions. And if you have any tech issues, put those in the chat box, and our behind the scenes team will be able to help you with those, but questions go in the questions panel. Also, this webinar will be available on demand, so you're going to be able to review this information again. And please do share this with your colleagues and let them know as well. We're going to cover so much important ground here, so we want to make sure we share the knowledge. Okay, I'd like to introduce today's presenters. We're going to be joined by Emel Mutlu. She's the owner of the market at Edgewood. Hi, Emel. Emel is a business owner. She's a marketer and writer. As I said, she's the owner of the market at Edgewood, and she's operating the independent community market serving Palo Alto and the surrounding Bay Area in California. She's been doing that for the last 3 years. And prior to the market, she held marketing leadership roles at leading companies in the tech industry. Director of product marketing at Twitter, that's where she oversaw product marketing for key advertising product and platforms at the company. And before that, Emel was the head of product marketing at Google's DoubleClick platform. And there she was responsible for driving global go-to-market strategy for the multi-billion-dollar business, inclusive of the company's fastest growing advertising products. So very impressive. Well, at Google, she also held various key initiatives for the company, including company sales expansion to Turkey and driving go-to-market strategy and brand marketing initiatives across Google's brand, display, and performance solutions. So that's all very impressive work, but she's happiest when writing, reading, doing yoga, and watering her collection of 200 plus houseplants. We know how healthy houseplants are for you, right? So that's why she has that big smile. So the market has been a Vori customer since 2019, and you can learn more at market@edgewood.com. And I'd also like to introduce Brandon Hill. Brandon is the co-founder and CEO of Vori. That's the operating system for the grocery industry that helps reduce inventory reordering time by that 80% that we were talking about. So Brandon and his founding team started Vori in 2019, and they launched their first product right at the height of COVID-19 pandemic. So these guys know pressure, right? And since then, Vori has grown to serve 90% of Northern California's natural and independent grocers. And the company is rapidly expanding all across the US, starting with the West Coast and beyond. Before Vori, Brandon co-founded 2 other companies. Grio is a social media platform for authentic discussion about current events, and it's backed by Y Combinator. And also Enza Academy, that was funded by Microsoft and VMware, and that provides free computer science curriculum to low-income high school students, so really important work there. Brandon has also worked at YouTube, at the White House, at UNICEF, and at the Huffington Post. and he received his bachelor's degree from Stanford University, and he remains an active part of that community. He's a fellow at Stanford's Institute of Human-Centered Artificial Intelligence, and he's passionate about the intersection of technology and social issues. So you can learn more about Brandon and catch him on Twitter and LinkedIn. And Brandon is joining us here. So thank you both for being here. We are going to cover a lot of ground in the next hour, but I want to start before we really dive into all this service and strategy that we're going to talk about by learning just a bit more about each of you and your companies. So Emel, I'll start with you. Why did you decide to open and operate the market?
Yeah, so the market actually represents an expansion from our little mom and pop shop that we had going on for about, our family had going on for about a decade or so in San Mateo, California. At that time, for 10 years or so, the community really loved that little mom and pop shop. We had wanted to expand for some time. And we were approached with an opportunity to expand in Palo Alto about 3.5 years ago. And at the time I was working in tech, I was doing my thing, building my career. But when that came up, the market was to be about 10 times bigger than our little mom and pop shop that my mom and dad were running. And so they asked whether I was interested in quitting what I was doing and helping expand the family business. And that's what I did. I had been in tech for about 15 years, and while I was loving it, it just resonated with me at the time. We love food as a family. We have a background. I literally grew up on a farm, agricultural farm. And we moved here to the US when I was 10, away from that in Bulgaria. And so I said, you know what, put the whole tech on hold and let's do this family business expansion. And so the market was born about 3 years ago. And so that's kind of the story.
And I love that, because now we're going to talk about how tech comes back into play to help you succeed at the market. So it all comes
full circle.
Yeah. And so, Brandon, on that note, Vori replaces that old school pen and paper ordering process to help grocery retailers replenish their entire store and discover lots of new products, which we know from COVID times is so important. So tell us a bit about your reason for starting Vori. You have such a great story. So I want people to hear this.
Thank you so much, Maggie. So it actually all starts with my parents. My parents have been in the grocery trade for the better part of 40 years. They actually met and fell in love with the Price Chopper headquarters, a chain in upstate New York. And they are always on the manufacturer side. They work for some of the big CPG companies, but they witnessed this problem all throughout their careers and of ordering paper, billions of dollars of food are transacted on pink, yellow, and blue sheets of matrix printer paper. And they came to us and, my co-founders and I, and said, can we solve this together? And, my parents really are the reason for starting this, just like so many businesses in the grocery industry that are kind of an intergenerational transfer of knowledge and expertise. That's how Vori was born as well. And we were just so lucky to meet Emel and the other wonderful people at the market shortly thereafter.
Excellent. I want to turn the stage over to you now to discuss some of the common problems that retailers face and the solutions that are working so well for retailers like Emel. So I'll turn it over to you to kind of tell us about some of what you have going on.
Yeah, so what we can quickly do is we have a little bit of an agenda for today. We can talk a little bit about the industry problem and kind of dive deeper into the issues that all of us are seeing, as well as tour some available solutions. After that, would love to jump into the market at Edgewood story and how we met, and the story of our partnership, and even some of the key benefits that that the team has seen there and that Emel can speak to, and wrap up with a quick overview of Vori. We'll get a demo in here so you can see everything that we're actually talking about down to the pixel, and we'll wrap up with a little bit of live Q&A, and sprinkled throughout here, there'll be some fun polls and other interactive activities as well. So fasten your seatbelts, everybody.
Excellent.
Actually, we can kick things off with a quick quote to kind of contextualize things. So here, Noah Katz, CEO of PSK Supermarkets, 14-door chain out east. says if we as independents run great stores, technology will be the tiebreaker with our chain competitors, right? Everything is modernizing in the 21st century. COVID has put a spotlight on the changing dynamics of our marketplace as well. And how can we adapt? So, but what's interesting though, is a study has come out by NGA that says over the past decade, the share of volume that flows through independent grocery has grown almost 10%, from 25% of all grocery spend to 33%, which is really encouraging to see how independents, they truly are the cornerstone of healthy communities. And we see that every day. Emel sees that every day. So one of the problems though that technology helps solve, as the modern shopper, in order to delight them, we need to have more and more products, more and more selection. We do see fragmentation, which is an interesting thing. Emel, I might hand the mic to you. Could you speak a little bit to the fragmentation we see in the market and like how it manifests inside your four walls?
Yeah, definitely. We really look at ourselves as a community market. And first and foremost, what that means to us is really understanding what people value and bringing that to them as an independent community market. And product selection is a huge part of that. And we really pride ourselves on, like, one of the things we know we have to do is we have to we want to work with like the little producers, the medium-sized producers, the local vendors, in order to bring our community and our neighbors the product selection that they're really looking for. That differentiates us in a huge way, but it also takes a lot of time and effort to do, right? So it is fragmented in that way, is, we're working with a ton of, single relationships, a mom and pop shop that's making one single type of drink, or somebody who has a commercial kitchen in their house that they built out that are making spices and meat rubs, and that's all they do. But it's amazing, and we want that product. So when you add all that up, we're looking at a very, very fragmented marketplace, and the potential is almost unlimited if you had the time and resources to bring that type of selection in. So that's just one example. We're not even at the tip of the iceberg yet of where we want to be as far as our own selection at the market. And so that's why, that's one of the reasons why we started talking to Vori.
Excellent. Maybe we can we have our first poll actually, so.
Yeah, let's take a minute here. We want to hear from everybody out there joining us from across the country. So please take a moment to answer this question. How many total vendors do you work with at your store, your stores? 50? Do you work with 100? Do you work with 200 or more? Do you work with so many vendors that you've completely lost count? Let us know. So we're gonna see what people say here, and we'll get that up for you. We have our responses coming in. Let's see here. All right, so 50% work with 100 to 199. And then 25% aren't sure, and another 25% say 50 or less. So obviously the bulk is in that 100 to 200 range. So Brandon, your thoughts on that? Does that surprise you?
It's interesting. It doesn't shock me at all. It looks like, the bulk were at or above 100. It's interesting, our average retailers on Vori, we're seeing 100, 150 vendors easily. It's interesting. I was on a call with a chain mainly in Michigan, 1,500 vendors, So this audience is well within the mark of what we see. And it is really challenging to manage a local supply chain. You want to have the local honey. You got to have all those local direct vendors, the one-offs that, the mothers and fathers and parents in the community come in and they want that gotta have it product, but the complexity of having that one additional vendor. Maybe Emel, how many vendors are you working with at the market?
Well, I know we need to catch up with that one vendor, with that one market. US 15. So we have over 200. We have also lost count. I don't know exactly. It's at least 250, but I don't know the exact number. It's a lot. and it's constantly growing. We're only 3 years old, so I don't imagine that number will shrink anytime soon. And to your point, Brandon, there's absolutely a necessity to be able to continue growing that number, right? You need a way to be able to manage that. We get a lot of vendors who are very excited to bring their product to market, and they're starting a new business, and they're a small company that's trying to make it. They have an amazing product, but they can't go anywhere to distribute their product because a lot of the markets that they go to offer it will only work with them if they're already working with a big distributor, right? So that's a built into the system ceiling for any small business who's trying to break the market with a great product. I really think that that's another component of companies like Vori, who are at the forefront of disrupting that and making it very accessible for not just the retailer and the market to do this, but also, you know, all boats rise with technology like this. Everybody benefits, and the small guys can now much more easily compete with the big companies and corporations out there.
That's an excellent point. That's an excellent point. So it's actually, maybe that leads into the next point here is how have stores historically managed ordering? And so we have a museum of reordering solutions here, kind of just walk through things that everybody in this call are probably familiar with. We've seen the Telzon machines, the bricks. You kind of type in on your hand, you can put it on your hip to have it read out the audio to a phone that then transmits it to the vendor. We're all familiar with fax machines, clipboards, paper catalogs. Many of those are probably still in stores today. And, you know, the distributors have apps too. You know, in the past several years, some of the, you know, our main lines have come out with mobile ordering technology to help ease the pain of ordering for so many products for many independents across the country. But so many other distributors that are regional, that are local, and much less these direct brands and one-offs don't have their own ordering method. And so you're pulled between so many different, I got to go to a web portal here. I have to go and submit this fax to my, there's a salad dressing vendor that I have to send a fax to. And, you know, that's kind of the cocktail of ordering solutions that are out there. And I do think there are a few interesting ordering technologies that have popped out separately, and you know, the BuyIQs and Genius Centrals of the world, ECRS Catapult, Vori, Shelf Engine, and it's really interesting to see this space start to develop, and it's exciting for everybody that we're getting kind of solutions out there. And one thing that, you know, Vori prides ourselves on is, you know, can we really root ourselves in the problem of the customer and evolve quickly and iterate quickly. We are only a year old. And I think that's with the ever accelerating demands placed on the retailer, solutions have to be able to maintain that velocity as well. So that at the end of the day, we can dazzle the shopper, right? When they come into the store. Yeah, Mel, I'm interested in your perspective. You know, what do you think in terms of, you know, some of the legacy solutions and, you know, tech providers' ability to, you know, move at the pace of the store, or, you know, iterate with you quickly? Yeah.
I mean, everything you have listed on and kind of spoke through, a lot of that is what we've done in our first few years, especially being relatively new to the grocery industry at the market size. For us, we kind of assumed, okay, well, this is how it is, I guess, in this industry. And, you know, we're, you know, walking around with clipboards and faxes and emailing in orders, phoning in orders. We're doing all of that. We're doing some vendors will take website submissions only. We use a couple of large distributor apps as well for the really big distributors that have built that for their customers, but it only applies to them. And so a ton of different formats. And I think the cocktail analogy is really great, except if you were at a bar ordering a cocktail, you kind of pick what you want, right? No, in this case, the market walks up to the bar and the bartender's like, here's everything, you have to do it this way. And so now you're drinking a lot of different cocktails. What I really mean by that is, long story short, it's really a vendor-driven it's a vendor-led process that the retailer has to adapt to. And if you have 200 vendors, you've adapted 200 ways of submitting orders, right? It's incredibly inefficient. I mean, coming from the tech side myself, I was just blown away. I'm like, oh my God, I'm back in the like dinosaur age. But it is what it is. There's so much I love about this industry, but the fact that it could really use a lot of efficiencies is not at all a question in my mind. And so, especially like when you think about, we're in an age when, like, thanks to technology, I can order some toilet paper right now and within 2 hours it'll be at my door. And in the same industry, like, that's nearly 7 billion people who can do that, right? Like, anyone who has access to Amazon.com can do that. The fact that we have to execute through extremely manual processes, like billions of cases of product to put on the shelves, through like Excel sheets and through paper and through phone and through fax. I don't want a fax machine in my store, but I can't take it out because some vendors just won't. The vendors we need product from, that's how they work, and they won't adapt. So that's kind of like my experience, and for me, it's really been mind blowing, honestly, being a new entrant to the market, to the retail industry, and I'm super, super, super keen on just changing all of that, at least in our market.
Excellent. Yeah, should we move on to our next poll? We've got another question for everybody. So we'd love to get your input on this. What does your team use to submit manual orders? So we heard from Emel that she's using all this non-tech and advanced tech and a mixture of everything. So select everything that applies there. Are you using the clipboard? Have you been able to get rid of your fax machine, or are you still stuck with that? Carrier pigeon, maybe? How old school are we? So let's see what we have out there. Check everything, and then we will take a look at those answers. All right, here we go. We've got 67% using a phone, so that was by far the biggest. 17% with clipboard, 17% still working with that fax, 17% say none of the above, and thankfully no one is using a carrier pigeon. So Brandon, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, this is pretty in line with what we see. You know, you have to call up your dairy vendors, or sometimes your fresh providers in deli, bakery, cheese, you know, center store. You have some different stuff going on. It's very much so in line with why we saw this problem, and, you know, kind of why we rolled Vori out, because my parents have been seeing this for many decades as well. A lot of these things have not changed. So yeah, definitely in line with what we've seen with our customers. Emel, what are your thoughts on the poll?
Yeah, I mean, I just thought it was really funny because, like, you could see that all of these ways are alive and well. They're alive and kicking. And just to like put a little bit more commentary, I think my least favorite item is the phone orders. Because the kicker is that, like, before you can call in your order and talk through each item code verbally, like, you have to prepare your, you have to get your inventory sheet and take inventory and write them down first so that you can talk through your order on the phone one by one as well. So, I mean, we're not just talking about one inefficient step. We're talking about like a multitude of steps that are manual. So that has to be by far, I think, a great example, the phone. And
then also, not to mention waiting on hold. That's everybody's favorite.
Always.
On hold, or yeah. So that's very interesting. Thank you so much. I think we can go to the next portion here. So what you're about to see, just so we can root everybody, is we are going to show a demo of the Vori technology, and bring you into the weeds of what it looks like, what it feels like, and the problems that we are trying to solve with it, which is streamlining the order process, as we talked about, but also goes so far as to help you find and discover any product you need with advanced, universal search capabilities, as well as, preventing holes from appearing on the shelf, and reducing out of stocks by bringing all your vendors in one place. It makes that a lot easier. So I'm going to play a video. And let me know if the audio isn't working, but I'm going to press play.
So welcome to the Vori demo. We're going to talk about a few things. One, if you have a ton of vendors in your store, and you're experiencing a lot of fragmentation, how Vori can make it very easy to order from all of them at the same time. We'll also talk about looking for and discovering products, given limited knowledge, or sometimes you have outdated shelf tags, or even comparing pricing between vendors. We'll look a little bit into universal search, and then we'll talk about out of stocks, and dealing with discontinues and replacements and how to prevent holes from appearing on your shelf. So let's dive right in. The crown jewel of the Vori ordering experience is one-pass scanning, the ability to walk your department or your store once and reorder from all your vendors. Every single product you can scan using this camera scanner on the barcode of the product, or you can actually scan shelf tags using a handheld scanning device. This empowers you to easily bring in the products and vendors that your customers love and that makes your store special without any of the headache that comes with managing a local supply chain. But the fun doesn't stop there. Vori is applicable to DC ordering, in-store transfers, and ordering for your commissary kitchen. And because it's so intuitive, it's really interesting. We see folks who are 80 plus years old who are used to writing the dairy order on a clipboard pick up Vori and haven't looked back in terms of writing some of the most consistent orders in the store. And in the age of COVID, finding the product you need right when you need it has never been more important. And so we rolled out universal search so that you can type in keywords and pull up products across all your vendors and catalogs. We all know how painful out of stocks are, and so Vori is to the rescue. We have really cool features like out of stock inventory replacements, which allows us to know when a vendor is out of stock at the warehouse, and you can automatically replace it with a like item. We also flag when items are discontinued, so it increases your fill rates and you're not placing orders for items that the vendor doesn't carry anymore. And that's all, folks. Let's wrap up with a live look at Vori in the hands of a customer. Oh, and before I forget, Vori is compatible offline. So when you have that low connectivity, when you're in the dairy cooler, Vori's got your back. Thanks so much.
All right. Let's escape, actually. 1 second. And let me reshare.
That was a great demo. I think I haven't seen that one.
Yeah,
Seen that one.
yeah, it's new. So I'm gonna pull my screen back up. So moving forward.
So welcome to the Vori demo.
Apologize. As you saw the last part of there, you saw one of our customers, Spanglish Market, but now we can talk a little bit deeper about how we got in contact with the market Edgewood and how our partnership has unfolded and a little bit more of the backstory there and the case study. So who makes for a good customer? We really are looking at independents that are working, as we were discussing earlier, above 100 plus vendors, right? You're working with, or any number of vendors where you start to have that headache. And typically everybody's doing that when you have any number of DSDs. So having a lot of small vendors. And that was what made, I think, the market Edgewood really such a great initial customer, because they're our neighborhood market. They're super special to us. And even just from a guest, a shopper's perspective, and we have a lot of trust with them, and they took a chance on us, and that meant a lot. So that's how we kind of got in touch, and the rest was magic.
Absolutely. That's what Vori is, magic.
I love that. Like, Emel, how did you first hear about Vori? How did you find out about this?
Yeah, I mean, the team walked through the doors one day, and like we weren't looking for a solution because, as I said earlier, we had kind of accepted that this was the way things are. And they walked in through the doors one day, and they just got really curious. They were asking questions. that I think were really like positive triggers for us. They're asking about how we do orders, and they're asking about how we discover new products. And they didn't even have a product at that time. They shared that they were looking to build a product that would solve a lot of those challenges we were telling them about as they asked us these questions. And we get a lot of walk-in sales calls from the vendors, technology providers, et cetera. We had never had anybody come in and really pinpoint the questions that we were experiencing so much pain point on. And so they really stood out. The team just really stood out to us from the get-go. And personally, I think for me, like it just like time and place, right? And context sometimes really makes a difference. They were speaking my language. I come from 15 years of working in the tech industry, and I was just like, oh my God, finally, I feel like someone's hearing me and is about to like start building with real velocity to solve these problems. So that's kind of that was the introduction. And we were curious from the get-go because of the how pinpointed they were on the problem. And even though they didn't have a product at the time, the team was super engaged, and you can just, you were like, okay, let's just see where this goes. We were super curious. Let's see where it goes. Not long from that point forward, they literally came back with like a prototype, and the rest is history. Like here we are. They have a real product out in the market and a ton of great customers. So that's how we got to working together.
I think that's so interesting. I mean, obviously your first impression was you were very impressed. But when you work with a big team and people come from different places, different experience with tech. So what was your team's initial reaction when you were telling them about the Vori product?
Yeah, so we had a lot of skepticism. Our grocery manager at the time actually was working for a larger corporation. And so, his systems in that corporate environment were already handed to him. They were custom built by the corporation. And he didn't have that luxury at our market. He was doing everything manually. And he also has been in the industry for, close to 10 years. And so he was very skeptical. He said, yeah, these are problems you need to solve, but I don't think these guys can do this. Like, this is not something you just do overnight. And so there's definitely a lot of skepticism. We're still working through some of that in some of our departments. Some of our department managers are definitely very resistant. I think that one huge takeaway is just see it. Like, once you experience what's possible, it's just a mind shift, and that mind shift is what's critical here. This one thing I forgot to mention earlier is that this is going to happen, and the retailers who adopt these technologies are going to have a differentiating cutting edge that's going to save them the time they need, the labor they need, the money they need, and bring them the product selection to compete. And those who don't embrace these technologies that give you that competitive edge, slowly those folks are going to get left behind. And that's really, truly my perspective. And that's why we wanted to embrace this, is because we don't want to be left behind. It's already really hard to compete in retail. The margins are not, everybody knows about retail margins. And so any savings you can achieve through efficiencies, ease of use, anything that can help you improve your product selection, stay on top of your game and your vision, is absolutely something that needs to be looked at. So that's what we do. We just show it to our team. We say, hey, just give it a chance. We know this is hard. We value you do great work, but let's take a look at this. And then automatically it's just like a switch that's flipped.
I think that's interesting, that kind of that switch, that aha moment. So Brandon, from your perspective, when you were talking to the market at Edgewood, what was the implementation like? What was their aha moment, in your opinion? Like, when did you know, okay, it's clicking, people are getting this, they're understanding what we're going for?
I'll never forget showing up with the product and the app in hand, and meeting with Jaime, the grocery manager at the time at the market at Edgewood. And it was Trey, Rob, and myself, the 3 co-founders. We show up and we're going to train him on how to use the app to scan and shoot a dairy order. And for the smaller vendors, in the market at Edgewood, he had not had the opportunity to scan. It was always done I think via Excel, an Excel spreadsheet on an iPad. And he takes the app and he scans a whole gallon, organic gallon of whole milk. And he jumps back. He's like, I have goosebumps. And then he's a pretty muscular guy, and he grabs all three of us, gives us a bear hug, and it just shakes us. And we're like, that's an aha moment. He felt, wow, I can now scan DSD vendor products. I can shoot orders quicker, allows him to get his job done faster, and not have to spend it on ordering, and also get the product that they need for the store. So that was I think a moment where, okay, it was clicking.
Yeah, I think if you get hugs from strangers on like a demo call, that's a pretty good sign that you're offering something people want and need. So that's great. So Emel, let me ask you, how do you measure success with Vori?
Yeah, I would say that there's a lot of direct metrics that we like to look at, but then when you really start to look at the ripple effect of a technology like this inside your four walls, there's a lot of positive byproduct as well. A lot of positive, like other softer metrics that are harder to measure, but which you start to see. Like the biggest ones, obviously, for us are, time savings. That directly translates into money savings, right? Because you're saving so much labor. I mentioned that we work with over 250 vendors and producers. Many of them are reordered weekly. So when you start to add up how much time that takes, all those menial repetitive tasks every single week, when we did our calculation, we were spending about, so just to remind everyone, our grocery business is 60% of our store, just grocery. And Vori is not just used on grocery, but just to talk about grocery, 15% of our team's time is spent on reorders. 15%. That's a lot of time. And for a business that size, you have a pretty sizable team. So for us, like that time savings is a real money savings. Another metric is customer satisfaction. Every day, we're very, very involved in our community. We do a lot of events. We talk very closely with our customers. And so we're always listening to what they want and what products they want, what, a favorite thing that they found that they want us to carry that we can consider. And so you really start to see customer satisfaction numbers going up when you are better able to respond to their product requests and finding interesting products and putting it on the shelf. Your loyalty grows, right? People come back because they know that they can get those products just from you, and they're hard to find anywhere else locally. And that directly results in revenue growth. Definitely harder to measure because these are kind of, you can't pinpoint those things. But we see those day in and day out with the way that customers talk to us and the feedback that they give us. Another metric that is really interesting that we were brainstorming with CJ, my brother, yesterday, that is very much involved in working with Brandon. And he said, you know what, training the team has gotten so much easier because we don't have to train them on a manual, like 3-step process with a clipboard and a phone and like up that spreadsheet that Brandon talked about earlier with the dairy orders that Jaime was filling out. That order guide is something that like I built for Jaime, and I spent like 4 hours on it, and he had to continually update it on a weekly basis, right? So all those like extra tasks and extra training and staying on top of all these manual spreadsheets and like orders, that's a real metric for us too, the time that it takes the team. Fewer errors and more accurate orders is a key metric as a result of all of that too. And you have a track record of everything you've ordered right there in the app. Nothing is lost. There's nothing like you have to file away. There's no, oh, you didn't tell me this on the phone, you told me that on the phone. So there's fewer errors and more accurate orders. And finally, I think like really important metric for our team is job satisfaction. A lot of retailers are afraid, and some of the grocery, like I remember Jaime he's like, does this mean I don't have a job? When technology comes, people are worried their job is going to get lost. And that's not true for every technology. It really depends on, what we're talking about. In this case, my team is actually able to spend time on things we can't get to, right? Like we have a whole like back burner projects that, okay, like you look into this product category. Let's bring in this new product area and dive into this new area that we haven't explored yet. We can start doing those things now because they have more time. They have more time. And so there's no shortage of tasks to do to help us differentiate ourselves. So we're not firing anybody or laying anyone off due to technology like this. Their job is just getting more interesting and higher value for our company.
Yeah, that's huge. And I want to talk about something. Brandon and I were on a podcast together a few months ago, and we talked about in Whole Foods Natural Products Retailer Survey, where we talked to independents. One of the big concerns that people had, problems that people had last year, obviously operating during COVID-19, were, out of stocks, problems with getting products, and feeling like especially the smaller stores weren't able to get the service that they needed. So I think, Brandon, we want to touch on this, right? Like how COVID-19 impacted business and how Vori can help, ease the pain that hopefully we have it in the rearview mirror, but you never know. And obviously things always come up. So how did Vori help with that and can help people kind of safeguard their business going forward?
From my perspective, you're asking?
Yeah, I mean, and Mel too.
Yeah, I'm happy to say a little bit about it and love to hear Emel's perspective. COVID-19 really shined a spotlight on, kind of the fragility of the supply chain in many ways. And maybe we're still even catching up in terms of product, getting those fill rates back up to where they were post 2020 level, pre-2020 levels. But the beauty of having all your vendors in one place is that you don't have to flip through to find, in Emela's example, toilet paper, or to find
bulk beans.
Oh my God, bulk beans, rice, the essentials, right? Your flour, as it was back then. But even today, there's still, beverages, there's like different CPG products that we need to get our hands on. And they are available in different pockets of the supply chain, different suppliers, and Vori makes it easy to search for, find, get in contact with, order, procure the things that you need to continue to make your customers happy, so that they keep coming to your store in terms of loyalty, and to mitigate some of the hard effects of COVID. So if all your suppliers are in your pocket, you don't have to scramble a lot of different places to get what you need. I think that's one thing that we did, was we actually, during COVID, we spun up a specific initiative with Chef's Warehouse, a number of other California vendors as well, to divert resources from the food supply chain, right? The food service supply chain, from restaurants, and actually get them to the shelf in retail. So take a surplus and fill in deficit so that retailers could meet demand for essential supplies. So that was even a special effort that we put together for some of our customers during kind of the peak of shortages.
Yeah, I would add that another thing to think about here is just kind of taking a step back. If you can get a sense of the efficiencies you can get day to day with a technology platform like this, day in and day out, you reap the benefits of those efficiencies. You are set up to handle any kind of disruption that much better. And that's what we saw, is that when something like COVID-19 strikes, right? We don't know the next time we need to be prepared to pivot. It's not going to be a pandemic. It might be something else, unpredictable, right? But when something unpredictable happens and you need to respond as an essential business or what have you, you're already set up to put your effort in pivoting, because you have a reliable technology partner that is foundationally supporting you to help you do that. So for example, when COVID happened, we had to think about redistributing our team headcount in the store so that we weren't so crowded in the aisles during the day and we could maintain that social distancing, right? And so that meant the quicker they can get in, do the orders and get off the floor and or distribute and do something else, the better. So those are just a few other things to think about, is you want to be really efficient for day to day, and that helps you when disaster strikes or something like this strikes. And all the other ways that Brandon mentioned, we benefited from that as well. We were finding ourselves, oh my God, everyone's baking at home and there's no yeast anywhere. So let's find like bulk yeast and repackage it, right? So like when you have an app that you can just turn to and find hand sanitizer from like a different place than you usually get it, that's where Vori really comes in, like from a more tangible perspective as well.
Yeah, and I think one other thing that we saw was just even due to health concerns, sales reps weren't even showing up to stores as often, you know? And so from a service perspective, which makes sense, and sometimes they can be older, you know, and so from a health risk perspective, they weren't coming in, but you still need to get products. So being able to trigger your own service to be able to like, you know, send an order, but quickly, so you don't have to be on the floor all the time, create space with customers, but also be able to get the order even if the sales rep can't come in. Yeah, it added that, you know, that flexibility and the dynamism that Emel is referring to.
Yeah. We actually have a number of sales reps who use Vori to the folks who would come in and do the orders themselves, because some vendors do that, right? Their rep comes in and they do the order. Instead of their spreadsheets, they're using Vori. So it's pretty cool.
Excellent. I want to talk about, before we kind of move on and open it up, we'll have another poll before we move on to Q&A after that. I just want to talk more in practical terms. So Emel, your team has been using Vori since November 2019, and you talked about how there was this little bit of resistance challenge in the beginning, and some of that's still ongoing. So I'm curious to know, the audience is curious to know, like in practical terms, like how did you and how are you continuing to just overcome the challenge of implementation and adoption of Vori across your team?
Yeah, I mean, we are nowhere near the implementation we want to have yet. And a lot of the resistance is not just limited to our team, because that's where, like, that's on me, right? That's on my team to, we can overcome that. We have full control over it. I think one of the biggest challenges that we face is actually with some of our established vendors who have been doing things, you know, the way they've been doing things for a long time. So I think that, you know, we're still working through some of those challenges, and we have actually made real, like, we've turned vendors around and gotten them on Vori, who, I say we, Brendan's team, who we never thought, and that's why we were so skeptical in the beginning, is we said, these guys are never going to want to do this. They just, they want their orders phoned in. They're not going to do it. And so, and some of these folks have, like, the folks that I never thought would get on have gotten on it. And they're so happy. They're more efficient on their end, on the vendor's end. But, you know, we're nowhere near where we want to be. And so those conversations are still ongoing, and we're making progress one by one. And everyone that we work with through Vori is a better relationship, is a more efficient relationship. Like, everything improves. And so I think what's really helped us is advocating to our vendors. What's also worked really well is anybody who's new, who comes along, who wants to pitch their product to us, we started to seed the idea that, hey, you may want to consider getting your product on Vori, because that's who we use to reorder to make things really efficient. And we're now thinking about making that not just encouraging, but almost making it a requirement in order to be able to work with us, because we're going to get to a point when we have 500 vendors that, you know, we can't be managing those manually. So that advocating has really helped. And what I said earlier about, if one person who matters just sees how it works, like, they're already bought in, and that switch flips. There's a lot of trust. And that was one of the maybe other skepticisms on our end, and we, you know, grilled Brandon and team on this in the beginning, is, hey, how do I know that you're not going to just like disintermediate the vendors, or you're not going to take our information and share it with another grocery store, or, you know, maybe they're accidentally going to see all the vendors that we work with, and our competitive edge locally is kind of compromised. And so we were, you know, Vori has assured us in so many ways in how they operate that those are not concerns that we need to worry about. They're really, really here to solve the problem for the retailer. There's so much, like, personal passion invested in that. And the mission and vision of the company really align with us needing to, like, feel good about those things. So yeah, some of the challenges.
Excellent. No, it's helpful to talk through it. So should we open it up to a poll now, Brandon? We have one more poll for you guys. would you work with more independent vendors, but you don't because the vendor isn't through a wholesaler? So like if you could, would you want to do this? So yes, no, not for me. Let us know what you think on this. And we'll take a look at this in just a second. All right. Here come our results, and we've got, okay, so we're split. 50% say yes, 50% say not for me. So Brandon, can you give us your take on that and just quickly kind of tell us more on how Vori can help before we open it up to the audience questions?
Yeah, this is interesting. So this is to Emel's point, actually, consolidating all the vendors kind of in one place allows you to bring in more vendors. What we actually see is a lot of stories of small brands, a better for you snack brand, or a new type of chocolate bar, or a refrigerated beverage. These new, interesting brands that are coming out, stores want to bring them on, but the overhead of bringing on one additional person. So they're like, we need to go through UNFI or KeHE. And what you actually start to see is if we can make it as easy to order the small one-off, brands or independent vendors as the big kids, then you kind of democratize access to product and actually allow stores to experience, like Emel said, grow to 500 vendors, have all of the coolest stuff first without all the headache. And that's, and when you think about the position of a neighborhood market, being able to walk in and see that is, what brings me to the market at Edgewood every time. So that, I do think that's what we end up seeing. And I can give a quick overview just as a recap before we go into Q&A as to, what Vori is. We'd like to say we're transforming the grocery replenishment process. We have a dynamic app that allows you to walk your department or walk your store once and reorder from all the vendors, main lines, all the way to the smallest single SKU, show up in a pickup truck vendor. And these are my parents, actually, who came up with the idea for Vori, Tori and Leon, right there. Next, we are trusted by solid number of names that we all know, national vendors, local vendors, leading retailers. We have 90% of the leading independent retailers in Northern California, and we're expanding aggressively into Southern California and then nationally. So really excited to have people support. And of course, it all started with the market at Edgewood. So, and as a recap, it is the mobile app is just one part of the overall platform, but it is a one-stop shop for ordering and streamlining replenishment. You have your order history, you can search for products, you can fill, you can preemptively, you can prevent out of stocks by knowing inventory levels at the warehouse. And so many cool things that, it really levels everybody up from the classic ordering methods. So just kind of really quickly what customers are saying, your director of IT will love Vori. Here's Tim Bratton, head of IT at Molly Stone, saying, I've seen a lot in my career, but nothing really gives me the control and visibility like I get with Vori. And you get your head buyers who want to bring in all the awesome products. I know Emel is always bringing in awesome new products along with CJ, and reducing that overhead while also being able to bring in those products is exciting. Allows you to also save time. Even in the case of Berkeley Bowl, some people think that Vori is easier to use than the existing apps, even that they get from their mainline vendors. So there's a little bit of fun for everybody in the store. And yeah, we're just really proud of what we've been able to accomplish with our customers to date. So,
all right, excellent. We have some questions that have come in advance, and a reminder too to go ahead and put your questions into the Q&A panel. And we're going to get to those now. So first up, Emel, we have a question for you. And we did kind of cover this a little bit, but about the resistance from your team on using Vori.
Yeah, it really is about skepticism and not wanting to do things differently, right? Change is hard. I think that's just kind of human nature. And when you've been doing something one way for years and years, and it's easy for you, right? You don't really feel like you need to change it. And I think that's kind of the mentality of legacy, of any legacy situation. But the interesting thing here is, right, like I view it as really like, that's the status quo that we've all kind of aligned to in the whole industry. And so that's why I view technology like Vori as being disruptive. It's disruptive in such a great way. And a mind shift is really required. And so you just really have to educate your team, be patient, and want to just show them. Same thing with your vendors, right? I would say, like, if I can just kind of transition that into like steps to take, the best step to take is first, like, evaluate your reordering process. Just take a fresh look at it. Look at it and ask yourself, like, are you still using a fax machine to receive inventory sheets or send orders? Are you using a phone? Are you using a clipboard? Are you using any of these things? And how much variance is there between them? Like, you're using all of them in your store? And that if you are to any significant degree, you're a perfect candidate to then take the next step, is talk about that. And with the people who matter, with the decision makers. If you're the decision maker, then you can start small. If Vori doesn't take, as far as I know, a huge upfront investment of, like, you're not going to lose a ton of money by trying this and it doesn't work for you. Start small, baby steps, like onboard one vendor who's willing to do it, and then repeatedly order with them through Vori, optimize your process, train your team on that, and then rinse and repeat with another vendor, and then go from there. That's again, back to that best practice that I mentioned with the market, is like encouraging people to try this is really your best bet to overcoming that resistance and helping them see it.
Excellent, that's great advice. Question here for you, Brandon. What feedback, if any, did the market at Edgewood or other retailers or other vendors give you that influenced the Vori product offering and capabilities?
Wow, that's a great question. And really much of the entire product, they took it from ideas on the back of a napkin to, a full-fledged kind of solution. But I think to call out one specific concept was the idea of an order guide. This is one of many ideas that they gave that directly from the market at Edgewood, and now it's powering tens of millions of dollars of sales volume on an annual basis, is for each individual order clerk or buyer in a store, and for each department, they can have their own curtailed subset of vendors, and for each vendor, they can have their list of products, right? Separate from the catalog. I have my 17 products that I order from, this particular HABA vendor, or, health wellness apothecary vendor, or I have these 73 products I order from this refrigerated beverage vendor, right? And just being able to go through almost like a checklist or a to-do list, and it replaces the paper order guide that's on, you find on a clipboard, those order grids that we've all seen. And that was something that we designed and launched in partnership with the market at Edgewood, and it's been a huge hit to date. And Edgewood has also referred us to some of our most important vendor customers as well, who have helped us build out our vendor product that now delights small cookie manufacturers all the way to large national mainline distributors as well. So we're just thankful for, and that's the thing with us, it's really important to be able to move fast and iterate and constantly stay rooted to the problems of the customer, as opposed to building what we want to build, right? So that doesn't anybody.
There's so many solutions out there that have concepted something, and then they look for customers with problems that fit what they've concepted. And that's really, I almost want to say dangerous, because you onboard people with a promise that doesn't ultimately really solve like their actual problem. I can't tell you the number of times that Brandon and team have walked in and they just shadowed our team. just like, hey, can we just like shadow you and watch what you do? Like, how do you do this? Like, and then what do you do? And they just, for hours of time, just watching us do our work, because that's how you build a solution that will actually solve the thing that you need. And maybe they'll come up with a feature that you didn't even think about because you're like in your day-to-day and it's hard to verbalize what you need. You need to be seen working, right? It's really great product development philosophy is going to like not just build a roadmap based on what you need, but bring kind of a mindset of like, let's maybe even redefine what you need by us just observing you. So both of those things really happen with Vori, and they're super nimble, super fast, like a real Silicon Valley, like startup company, right? So there's 20-year-old solutions out there that are very similar, but those are the questions to ask if you're talking to any of those vendors or using one right now. How easy is it to implement? What's your roadmap? What have you built so far? What are you going to build? And how do I plug into your roadmap? And how will you take my feedback?
Yeah, that's excellent. That's excellent. Just such practical advice. And we have, so we're pretty much tight on time, but we have so many questions coming in. So if you guys are both game to hang out for just a few minutes more, I do want to get through some of the questions that have come in. And we have a question here. Let's see. What, Emel, was there anything you were worried about as an early customer of Vori, and how did you manage the risk that goes with implementing such a new technology solution? Basically, any advice for people looking at new tech to implement in their neighborhood and their independent market?
Yeah, we didn't have an implementation concern because it was clear that this being an app, and it's not something that we would have to like integrate into our systems yet, or like uproot new technology and like uproot old technology and embed new technology. We didn't have to go through like a heavy implementation process at all. So that was not a concern. I think I mentioned earlier that I was concerned about kind of privacy and data sharing. And I brought up that with Brandon numerous times, like, hey, like a number of things differentiate us that you guys are going to have access to. Like, how do you protect that? And so that's something that they helped us overcome by, them sharing their product development philosophy with us and everything. I think another concern was just like the time that we would spend with them on like having the meetings, sharing our process, just spending the time with them that they wanted to understand what we do to build their product. We're like, is this going to be like a huge waste of time in the beginning, right? You're like, are you really going to be able to build this, or is this going to be like time well spent? It didn't take long for us to overcome that either, because you talked about like the tipping point moment earlier. For us, that was when they came back with a prototype, literally like within like a couple weeks. And the prototype was so realistic and polished and beautiful and like reflected exactly what we talked about. And like we would then be like, well, how about this? And then the next day they would come back and the how about this was fixed too. So those were just some of the concerns and how we got over them. I think the overall, the advice that I would give is just like when evaluating solutions, really basically ask the questions that matter to you as a company. If you don't have a lot of time to implement, ask implementation questions. If you need help with handholding, ask the handholding questions. Are you going to hold my hand through this? How can you help me implement this? How can you help me overcome the resistance? Tell me about your data sharing, process. So.
Yeah, excellent. And some of the questions that are coming in, Brandon is going ahead just to help make sure everybody gets their questions answered. He's answering them by typing an answer, so check that out. And also, of course, any questions that we don't get to, you can connect with Vori after and follow up, and they will be more than happy to answer all your questions. So I'm going to just ask just another question here for Brandon, just about the implementation. But if you could just pinpoint, like for people kind of as a heads up, what's the most difficult part of the technical implementation, and how do you help the customers work through that?
Great, thanks for that. We often, I think the number one question on people's minds often, because they're like, wow, I would love to, I think it's how do we get started and how do we get our vendors on? So we do believe in walking before you run, right? There's no reason, say you have 12 locations in your chain, or you have a one or a couple, but you have all the departments. Like, we can start, as Emel said, with a department or with one store location and kind of experience success and grow from there. And the thing is, Vori is a wall-to-wall solution, so we can do bakery, deli, cheese, meat, seafood, grocery, haba, whatever. But getting your vendors on is probably our most popular question. And there's kind of three ways. Well, first, we work with you. We can get your vendors set up. We can get all your vendors set up in 24, 48 hours just by using your authorized file or linking in with your POS. We can ingest that APL. Then we'll work with you to invite those vendors to Vori to get a free dashboard where they manage their promotions and they can load their products and images and stuff like that into the app for you, as well as any other store that's on the Vori network in their area. And that's, for example, in Berkeley Bowl in Northern California, really important, culturally important, independent up here. We got 277 of their vendors set up in 72 hours, right in the, when the sky was falling in the, heat of March 2020 COVID. They said, oh gosh, everything's going crazy. We need all our vendors on, and we were able to do that for them. And then we can go further if, with EDI to bring in inventory levels so you can get visibility into warehouse levels and sync that data into Vori as well. So I think that's how we kind of work with vendors, and it can be as easy as they get an email PO, which that can be set up instantly, or we can go as complex as you want the full kit and caboodle and you get information from their warehouse. And yeah. It's
awesome.
it's
So I know we really talked up that 80% and how much we want to save 80% of our time. So on average, how long does training and implementation take, and how long does it take to see that 80% reduction in ordering time?
Well, the good thing is, depending on where you are, you can see it almost instantly. We can come in and get a department set up same day. And we absolutely can get a whole store set up within a week. And if you have multiple locations in your chain, that first store is always the one that will take the longest if it takes a week or so. Then after that, it'll be plug and play, because it'll be, we're using the same information that we used to set up your first store. But yeah, we're talking about hours. This is a plug and play piece of software. This is not a heavy bolt-on, big implementation, project manager type situation. This is, you download a mobile app, and for the most part, we can have your products and vendors set up almost instantly.
All right, excellent. So we are pretty much out of time, but before we actually say goodbye, if you could just give us your key takeaway overview, just sum up what, if attendees want to go back and tell their teams, how can a platform like Vori help them succeed?
I think there's, really three things, and Emel has spoken to this. It's end up saving a lot of time. If you're spending 15-20% of overall work hours placing orders, now you can shave that down by 80%. Imagine the power of, now you have, to frame that, it's almost like doubling the power of your workforce for a very no-brainer, monthly fee. And now you can spend that time or that additional energy on customer service, helping your customers find items, thinking about the next promotion you want to do, or having a summer wine Saturday event, or thinking just strategically about the business too. Would say as product access and availability, being able to find exactly the product that you need, all the entire supply chain there in your pocket, which helps reduce out of stocks. It helps you, which also drives sales, right? If you have the products that you need. Ultimately, this just creates a better experience for your shopper and drives more loyalty and cements the brand, right? Helps you fulfill the mission of it lowers the barriers to entry to fulfilling the mission of, let's be a local, community-centric market. And we can actually bring in the local and the community-centric products, as well as the products that are more mainstream. And we can do it quickly with the tools that used to be only available to, the large enterprise players of the Whole Foods and the Walmarts of the world. And that's not true anymore with technology like this.
Excellent. I love that. So Emel, you touched on this a little bit, but if we could just sum up, what 3 questions should people ask before they decide to implement a solution like Vori?
before they decide, I think I'm going to remind people to what does my ordering process look like? Go ahead and grade it. Take a look. We talked about all the things to look for, right? The faxes, the calls, the clipboards. So go ahead and give yourself a grade at your market about your, 0 to 10, where does it stack up? And then, take a look at where the best place to take a baby step is. Identify a vendor where that is would be amenable to doing this. Hop them on, and that's where you begin. And then from there, it should flow so much more easily. I would say, start there, and then the rest will come, honestly. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you both so much. I mean, I've learned so much. I know our attendees have learned so much. Thank you for giving us the extra time to work through all the questions. And, for me, I just love what you said about, we at Whole Foods Magazine, we're serving the independent natural products grocers, and they're really on this dedicated mission to help support the health of their communities. And it's so hard. So a tool that helps them do that with ease and just feel the rewards more and communicate with the consumers more and just have that time and is just so wonderful. So thank you for informing us about it. We're going to get your information up on the screen so that if anybody wants to get in touch with Emel and Brandon, there's their information. You can do that. Follow-up questions, please do ask them. Again, you can check out the Market at Edgewood at the market@edgewood.com. And if you're ever in Palo Alto or the San Fran Bay area, stop in and say hi. I would love to get there and say hi to you and check out the store. For more on Vori, head to Vori.com. You can learn more about the company. You can request a demo or meeting. And also, as we noted, this will be available on demand. So you'll be able to check back in with this content. And thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Brandon and Emel.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks everybody for attending. This was great.
Excellent. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.